Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Movies with G-Rose. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed last episode where I talked about everything coming out in 2021 from here until the end of the year. This episode I recorded a few days ago with my friend Jimmy, and we are going to discuss the films in the Conjuring universe. We are going to spoil a fair amount of stuff that goes on in these movies, but in all honesty, that's not why you go to see them. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, there's a link in the description for the video form. This is actually going to be a video call in from my guest Jimmy for the first time. And conversely, if you're watching the video version and you want to switch to audio, there will be a link in the description for that as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and let's get on into it. So, this isn't live. We can cut anything we need to.
Everything you say.
Yeah, I'll just mute my audio track in post. You're not even ready for this, dude.
Nice.
Can you read that?
Wow. Oh my god. You were right. I was not ready for it.
Natalie got that for me for Christmas.
That's crazy. They named their glass brands
After
the
me,
same
dude.
thing as your podcast, dude.
Yeah, pure coincidence,
You
actually.
should sue them, dude.
All right, shot time.
All right.
Cheers, brother. Oh. Hey, Jimmy. This is
G-Rose, what's up?
This is our first. This is the first video call podcast I've ever done. Anyone that's ever called in before this has just been the voice call.
This is
So
the first video.
well, welcome to Movies with G-Rose. I always like to kick off the podcast by asking, besides the movies we're talking about tonight, what is like a movie that you've seen recently that stuck out to you? Doesn't have to be a new movie, just anything.
Oh, dude, because the only movies that I've watched recently are the Conjuring series.
I know you watched like 4.
Oh, you know what? No, you know what? You know what I watched? I watched Godzilla versus Kong.
Oh yeah, that was
And
pretty good.
that stuck out to me because there's for those unfamiliar, there's a big monkey.
Yeah.
His name's King Kong, and there's a big lizard. His name's Godzilla, and they not friends. They fight each other.
Yeah, that one's pretty good. Mecha Godzilla was pretty
Pretty
fun.
crazy. Not recommended for children under 4.
Okay, yeah, that was pretty good. I also like to ask my guests, when did you kind of like, have you always been interested in watching movies? Like, did you grow up watching movies? Like, how did you kind of get into like, because it's for some people it's more of a hobby,
Cinema?
obviously. Yeah, I mean that's why like I do the podcast. It's more of a hobby for me. Do you think it's a hobby for you, and when did it kind of become a hobby for you?
Oh, I've always prided myself on being pretentious. So I always at least pretended to be into movies, but
Right.
moment when I actually started to know what I was talking about was at some point while I was taking my film as literature class in high school.
Yeah.
And teacher was Mr. Casburn, and he led the theater department and everything, and he was great.
Yeah.
He watched movies in class.
Real son of a bitch.
Yeah. Real dirty motherfucker.
Yeah, real piece
And no
of work.
eyebrows.
Real piece of work, that guy.
Real piece of work.
Um,
Yeah, no, but for real, great dude, great teacher. But I wasn't kidding about the no eyebrows thing. He shaved them off.
that's nice. I had a high school teacher that wore the same outfit every single day.
What?
Yeah, and he had earrings. So,
What was the outfit?
blue jeans, black shoes, black t-shirt, black blazer. He wore a
Wow.
black t-shirt with a black blazer over it. And then he had short spiked hair and earrings, and he taught the speech class.
You know,
Yeah.
classic look.
And I remember one day in class I asked him, "Does your closet look like those characters in cartoons when they open their closet and all of the it's just a bunch of the same out. It's like 20 of the same outfit." And yeah, he didn't love that question actually. It's a good class though. So we're obviously talking about the Conjuring universe. Last night I rewatched The Conjuring 2 because I literally hadn't seen it since it was out in theaters. I saw it one time in theaters, and then I watched Annabelle 3. And other than that, I'm all caught up and pretty recent. And I know you just watched four of them.
Well, I watched 3 that I hadn't seen before and 1 that I thought I hadn't seen before, but I actually did.
Right.
Took
Okay.
me a few minutes to realize I already saw it, but at that point I was locked in and I just
Yeah.
watched the whole thing.
I won't get ahead of myself, but that one's not. I didn't think it was too bad, but I would love to approach this by your tier list, um, and we can kind of go from there.
All right. Do you think we should start with number 1
I,
or
w- I
number
I would
7?
say we start with your favorite first,
I
and
agree.
we go from there.
I think it would be pretty hard to disagree that the first Conjuring is
Yeah,
easily the best of the series.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's
I
fair.
feel like there's no question on that, right?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, so the movie's directed by James Wan, and I'm definitely gonna get into him more because he's such an interesting director because like he did the first Saw movie, which was good. He did The Conjuring and a lot of the other movies in this series he's at least a producer on, and he also does the Insidious movies, or at least
Right.
like so and and I definitely think as the series goes on, the line is blurred a little bit more between like Conjuring and Insidious, and I hate the Insidious franchise.
Really?
Yeah, I think the first half of Insidious is like really, really, really good. And then as soon as they start showing like the demons, it gets really
The
bad.
Demon Universe?
Yeah, the and that's a common thread that we're gonna talk about in here, but I don't like the demon battles. It's like my least
We
favorite
want to
part
of the Conjuring movies?
of all these movies. I don't
You
like
know
demon
what? And
battles.
I don't know, do we want to get into that right now? Cuz
Well, we can talk about The Conjuring. I mean,
yeah.
what do you think about The Conjuring? The first
I
one.
love it. It is maybe my favorite horror movie of all time,
Wow.
actually. So I it was the first horror movie I saw in theaters. I was whatever age in high school when it came out. When did it come out? 2014, something like that.
It came
Um,
out 2013.
2013, close enough. I went with my friend Drake, and him and I bonded a lot in high school
Yeah.
over our mutual love horror movies. And The Conjuring just really stood out to me
Yeah.
when I first saw it because I'd never experienced anything like that before. Like being terrified, but also it's fun. Like you're enjoying
Yeah.
this terror. But
Yeah.
I really loved it. So many scenes stuck out to me. Um, Easily the most memorable of the franchise, I would say.
Let me ask you, when's the last time you've seen this movie?
I think the last time I watched the first Conjuring was actually that was only like maybe a month ago,
Oh,
less than a
really?
month ago.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
I watched The Conjuring 1 and 2 recently. I just wanted to they were on
Yeah.
Netflix.
Yeah.
So I just wanted
And,
to
and you
revisit them.
you felt that the first one held up?
Absolutely. I
Okay.
think the first one held up. And
S-
you know what? I mean, spoilers guys, but we haven't gotten there yet, but I liked the second one too.
So
Thought that one held up.
so the first one, I will agree, for a very long time it was my favorite horror movie, and it was actually overtaken by Hereditary. Um,
Really?
and I think so. I probably rewatched the first Conjuring movie like a year ago, maybe a little bit more than that. And I had a bunch of friends over, and we turned off all the lights, and we rewatched The Conjuring, and I didn't love it as much. Um, I still would give it like a soft 8 out of 10. Um, and it's probably for me as well. It's probably the best movie in this series. There's maybe one other movie maybe that would come close to it, but I don't know. I think it's just a matter of taste. These movies don't really scare me at all anymore, and I think it's just because I feel like the style is almost outdated. Like
Really?
when you compare this, it's I don't know. This is like this series is the best version of like movie theater horror of just like I call it haunted house horror is the way that I
Yeah.
describe it of like for the most part, it's a series of spooky sequences of someone like if you were in real life, if you went to a haunted house and
Right.
each room is just a different thing, that's what this series is. And I think the best movies are the ones that can connect those sequences to the story and to the characters. And
Yeah.
conversely, like the worst versions of these are when it's just here are some characters and then a bunch of unrelated shit happens to them. And those are like the worst versions, right? So this movie I think does it the best because most of the movie is just like a small family. Like like it's this story's been stereotyped to death, but it kind of did the best when it came out. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah. Going off of that, I feel like first Conjuring, none of the Conjuring movies break any ground per se, but they're taking up this classic style of horror movies, this haunted house
Yeah,
horror,
yeah,
as you just mentioned,
yeah,
and they're just doing it really well,
yeah.
you know?
hmm and it's like to me, there's like kind of three styles of horror. There's this, which is the haunted house horror. There's there's like the slasher horror, and then there's something like Hereditary, which I think is like it quickly became my favorite version because it's not really even like horror. It's more of just like dread and suspense. You know what I mean? Like it's not
Right.
what you would typically think of because when you think of a horror movie, you think of this, you think of The Conjuring. You know what
Right.
I mean?
Right.
And so because of that, I
Absolutely.
appreciate it, but also it's like I'm so desensitized to scary stuff to begin with.
Mm,
Like when I was young, like my dad showed me horror movies way too young and I had nightmares and it just desensitized me to all of it. You know what I mean? And so I love watching these movies in theaters and I probably always will, but this movie, The Conjuring, like when I rewatched it about a year ago, it was a little bit of a letdown because it didn't live up to like I remember it being like the best horror movie ever, and it is pretty good. So I don't know.
But one question I wanted to ask you coming into this is what do you think makes a horror movie good in the first place?
That
I've got my own thoughts on that, but I want to hear what you think.
um and it's interesting because I'm gonna say some stuff later on that you're probably not gonna agree with, and it's kind of blasphemous to the series regarding a couple of these films. But I have. It really depends on what you want out of a horror movie. And I think that the definition of horror is so skewed. If if we're going off like the traditional horror definition, it is this series. It's this or it's Insidious. It's haunted house horror. And to me, I prefer something that's probably what you would call a thriller or like a suspense drama, which is like Hereditary. You know what I mean? And there's not a lot of
Yeah.
those out there, to be honest with you. Um, what makes a horror movie successful? I don't know. I guess it comes down to creativity of the horror sequences. So are the horror sequences super predictable and corny, or are they like at least like interesting to watch and fill you with dread while you're watching them the first time? Right? That would be like the number one thing for me. And then after that, a close number two is um, are the characters likable and are they believable? And those two go really hand in hand because as soon as you throw characters into the story that do the stupidest thing possible, for me it
Right.
completely takes me out of the experience.
Absolutely.
What's your take?
I would 100% agree on that. I guess where I would start is something you actually touched upon earlier is that do the scares have something to do with the characters,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, I was watching what movie was it? It was a really, really awful horror movie. I forgot which one it was. Um, but I remember what happened was character, the scares would happen behind the character, and the character wouldn't even see it. There would be something scary happening in the background, and
Yeah.
it's like the character isn't even seeing it or reacting to it. How do you expect the audience to be scared by that? Because terror happens in the audience's relation to the character, right? If the character's not scared, for what reason would the audience be scared? You know what I mean?
I agree sometimes because I do think that you can make effectively scary scenes when the audience knows something that the character doesn't, and
Okay.
there's a form of dread that comes from that. And I think that like in Hereditary they do that. They do that as well. Um Sometimes, but typically it's like and these movies do it a lot too, where it's like usually the usually the character is scared because other scary things are happening, but then there's something like really scary behind them that they don't know about that we do
Yeah.
know about. And I will agree that typically those don't work quite as well for some reason.
Mhm.
Like for whatever reason, I feel like I agree. There's something to that. Like if you relate to the character's fear, it makes it more effective.
Makes it more scary. It puts you in their shoes, right? But
Yeah.
then again, I'm about to say something that completely contradicts what I just said. The My favorite jump scare in a movie ever was in Insidious, where Patrick Wilson's sitting
Yeah, yeah,
there
yeah.
and Darth Maul's right behind him,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
he's
yeah.
not aware of it.
Yeah. But the other
And
character
it's amazing.
but the other character in the scene is still aware of it.
That's true. That's
There
true.
is someone still there to react to it as the audience. So,
True.
but but yeah, I mean, there is something to the audience noticing something that you don't. It's kind of what It Follows. Like the first half of It Follows is kind of built on that premise of like
Yeah.
the audience knows that something is following them, but the character does not, and there's a sense of dread in trying to figure out who is the follower. And so it
Right.
it can be done, but I agree with you, it's a lot harder to pull off.
Absolutely. So I guess back to The Conjuring. Um, I guess one of the things that makes it great is the performances. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think that
yeah, the performances are, and I will say for the most part in this series, the performances are usually pretty good.
yeah, I agree for the most part.
Yeah.
Um, I think there are a few notable exceptions that I think we can bring up as we go down the list. But Patrick Wilson and who's his wife?
Oh,
Do you
I
know what her
don't.
name is?
Um, I
I
don't.
learned it the
It's
other day and I
v-
forgot already.
Vera Farmiga.
Yeah, Vera Farmiga. They're great.
Yeah, they're good.
I would go so far as to say Patrick Wilson, maybe even underrated actor in Hollywood.
He's really good in these. I
Um,
will give you that.
He's good in these. I feel like he's not in a whole lot else besides these
No,
James Wan horror movies
no,
that I
he's
can think
super
of.
likable though.
Yeah, I really like him. He pulls it off very well. Farmiga is great. They've got
Yeah,
good chemistry, I think. Um,
yeah, it's a good movie all around. I agree with you. I have no problem with you putting it at number one. Do you want to move on to number two?
yeah. So number two, I would say is The Conjuring 2.
That sucks to hear.
Really?
Yeah, dude. Go ahead.
You didn't like it?
Dude, I really didn't. Like
Really?
like I actively disliked this movie when I rewatched it last night.
Wow. Okay, what made you dislike it so much?
I like I said earlier, I really don't like this is The Conjuring 2 feels like they took The Conjuring 1 and they turned it into a Hollywood blockbuster. And
Really?
what I mean by that is I I really dislike the action sequences in this series, and The Conjuring 2 is filled with them. There's and a lot of it has to do with when they try to implement like CGI. Like whenever there's a character like levitating
Yeah.
or screaming at a demon, whenever anyone's screaming at a
Yeah.
demon, I'm out.
It's not
It
scary.
it completely loses it for me. And this movie, The Conjuring 2, does it a lot. And it's also just too long. This movie is over 2 hours. It's 2 hours and like 15 minutes, which is way too long. And on top of all that, it's very confusing what they do with like the realism aspect, because like some of the movies in this series, including this one, are based on a true story. And it's interesting because The Conjuring 2 like does a good job of like addressing the possibility that it was all a hoax on the part of the family, but then they like supplement it with like crazy CGI battles. Like dude, I hate the end of this movie where she battles the nun and like is screaming at the nun and the window shatters in and she's flying in the air, and it's like I just want like believable small stuff, and I don't like when the demons overstay their welcome. I don't like when there's all the action. So I was really turned off from this movie, to be honest with you. I'd put it pretty far down on the list.
Heroes, I 100% agree with the sentiment of everything you're saying. All right. And I'll get to what I mean by that in a second. But the idea that small things are scarier than big things is something I've been thinking about forever. Right. Because giant monster steps on someone's house, that's not scary.
No.
Right. Godzilla is not scary. But like, you know, a couple friends in their living room sitting around hanging out, and then like a chair kind of moves slightly, that's way scarier, that's way more chilling, even though it's like less of a threat, right? It's less of a threat to their well-being, but it's like something
Relatable.
just being a little out of place is way scarier than something huge happening. And I agree that, the end of The Conjuring 2 is a prime example of this. There's the nun, the wind is blowing, glass is shattering, she's screaming, I damn you to hell. And
Yeah.
it's not scary. But I think the scene works if you think about it, not as being necessarily a horror sequence and more of an action sequence. And I actually
Yeah.
think it works as an action sequence pretty well.
Yeah, I don't know. It just maybe I just have weird expectations when I go into a horror movie. I expect most of them to be bad because it's like, dude, if I made a list of every horror movie that had a good ending, it would be
It
incredibly short.
would be you'd count them on
Yeah.
your fingers.
Yeah, and so like I always take the ending of these movies with a grain of salt, and
Right.
you'll see that reflected in my opinions. Like a lot of times I'll give a movie leeway if the ending is bad, so I don't even count the ending of The Conjuring 2 as like the main downfall of it, even though I do think the last like 20 to 30 minutes like really I think take the movie down a notch. But even disregarding that, I think throughout the film it jumps the shark too much in terms of relatability. I think in general, all of the scares are too big. The reason I like The Conjuring 1 is because most of the scares for most of the movie
They're small,
are small things.
subtle.
But they're memorable. Like everyone
Mm,
will always remember like the hands clapping. Everyone will
right.
always remember that. But
Right.
it's so tiny. Whereas in this movie,
Right.
like you see the demon's face multiple times, like you see
Right.
things flying around, most of the scares are heightened, and it's par for the course for a sequel. You know what I mean? You just take everything
Right.
and turn it up. And then on top of all of that, the CGI for the Crooked Man is
Yes.
unforgivably bad.
Yes. I 100% agree with that.
It's jarringly bad, and it immediately takes you out of the movie.
100% agree with that.
Like
Um
I forgot how bad it was. I feel like even when I watched it in theaters though, when it first came out, I feel like
Yeah.
even then it took
Oh
me
yeah,
out
I
of
didn't
it.
like it. I didn't like it in theaters.
And watching it now, it's really bad, and they like it's not small either.
Right.
Like, and that's
He's
on.
like, there was a crooked man in
Yeah,
a like he doesn't even
they
need to be saying that.
they
Why?
show him a lot, and he has no relation to the story whatsoever.
Right.
And
Right.
so
It was
it
just jammed in there.
yeah, it really
You have
sucked.
to have your nursery rhyme bullshit.
Yeah, it really.
Otherwise, it's not a horror movie.
And like I get that, like apparent they were supposed to make it into a spin-off, and then it got canned for whatever reason. And I understand, like they do that a lot in this series. You can tell that they're introducing new characters for their own
Yeah.
spin-off, and that's whatever. Like I appreciate that. This is the only horror franchise doing that right now, and
Yeah.
we should address the fact that like there are no other horror franchises except Insidious that exist. Period.
Right.
There are no slashers left. There's nothing. This is the only one, and they're doing like a multiverse thing, and it's cool.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that, but like when you inject a character that doesn't have anything to do with the story into the plot, and he's also bad, like the Crooked Man,
Yeah.
I just there's a lot going against this movie in my opinion.
I agree. The crooked man was one of, if not the biggest weakness of The Conjuring 2.
Yeah,
It was ridiculous to look at. Why did it have to be CGI? Why couldn't it have been a practical effect or a guy in a costume? It looks better 99% of the time, in my opinion.
in
Or if
Annabelle.
if you can, for something like that, there's no excuse for, oh, this had to be CGI.
No.
No, it didn't.
Well, I mean, they do some stuff with him, like when the dog turns into the Crooked Man. Like that's something that you would need CGI for, probably,
You know what?
and
I
that
felt
was
like that
really
was pretty
cool.
cool for,
That was
yeah. It
cool. But
was
again,
cool until he comes closer and that's like,
exactly,
oh,
it was cool when it was a silhouette, and
right.
then as soon as the silhouette fills in, it's not so interesting. And it's interesting in Annabelle 2, they do a very similar sequence, but it looks great. And it's actually very effective. That's just a CGI thing. Like you can tell in 6 years or whatever, like the difference is staggering. But yeah, I don't know. Honestly, dude, I gave The Conjuring 2 a soft 5 out of 10. Um,
Really?
I really disliked it. Um, the only reason I didn't give it a 4 out of 10 is because I kind of stacked it up in my mind against some of the other movies in this series, and I was like, okay, like 5 is
Oh,
probably fair. I didn't want to rate it lower than some other films, so I was like, all right,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah. That makes sense.
Um,
Um,
what's your
I,
number three? Unless you have more to say.
before one quick thing, the reason I would rate The Conjuring 2 a little bit higher is because it really keeps with the tone of the first one, right? It's, it succeeds at creating the same kind of haunted house atmosphere, very similar, cinematography, set design. Um,
Yeah, I mean,
the
I hear
characters
you.
of the Warrens are still very strong, I think. Um, because that to me would have been the end of the franchise if they couldn't keep with the tone of the first one, and if they had to, I don't know, change things up drastically to the point where
Yeah,
it didn't feel like it was the same series.
yeah,
But I give them props for keeping with the style, the tone,
yeah.
um, the themes.
Okay, so
Number
if you
three.
want to, yeah, if you want to talk about number three,
All right, let's see how you feel about this.
okay,
I think you might agree with me on this actually, but
all right.
number three, The Nun.
Wow, really?
Do you not agree? Do you not agree?
It's funny you say that, dude. Natalie really liked this movie,
Interesting.
and
So you didn't like it.
I I believe I gave this one a 6 out of 10, which is pretty high for this series. Let me look it up real quick. I thought this movie was okay. I thought the twist was cool. And I thought that some of the visual aspects in this movie were the best of the franchise. I gave this movie a 5 out of 10. Um, but dude, like I said, there's a couple really quick sequences in this movie that are purely CGI that look straight up metal, and they look so
Yeah,
cool. Like I remember, dude, there's like one sequence of like them, like I don't even remember what it was. It was like a circle of demons like summoning something, and it just looked so cool.
yeah.
Some of the imagery in this movie was really really good. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I thought it was just okay. The main character in it is actually the chick that plays Lorraine, uh, V- Vera or whatever her name is.
Yeah, Vera
Her
Farmiga.
her younger sister, I believe, is the lead.
There you go. I was wondering if they were related.
Yeah, she's the lead
I
in
thought
this.
maybe it was like, okay, this is taking place in the past. Maybe that's like her mom or something. Like
I
I
don't
thought that's what it was gonna turn out to be.
No, no, I don't believe there's any relation like in the story,
Yeah, I
but
don't think so either.
there's one line in Annabelle 2 where one of like the nuns in that movie like says something. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I thought this movie was just okay. I thought the twist was good. I think some of the scares were pretty good actually, like small stuff, like things moving when they shouldn't before. I thought the setting was really cool and the tone was cool. But I just remember being kind of bored. That I think that was my main criticism is I thought the characters were just kind of boring.
what I love about this one is that they were willing to make what I would even argue is more of a drama than a horror movie.
Okay.
And I felt that one of the biggest strengths of this movie was the performances. I think that arguably this has the best acting out of the whole series.
Wow.
Every single character, the nun, the priest, um, the other guy, he I remember he had some kind of backstory that was revealed at some point. Maybe I'm
Yeah.
making that up. Um,
I
I
feel like
thought
he
that the
did.
acting was
Yeah.
incredible, and they actually put their all into this. Like I didn't get the sense that they were treating this like, oh, this is just some, whatever, this is some cash grab horror movie. I really felt like they were putting some solid effort into acting this, especially the main priest. I felt like
Yeah, I remember
um,
him being okay.
the atmosphere, 100% with you on that. It's fantastic.
The setting's really
I
cool.
felt that the way that it was shot, I felt like they were going for more of like an old school look to it. Now maybe that was just my
I saw this movie last year and I don't man, now I wish I rewatched
yeah.
it. But I remember it being
They were
pretty
using a
good.
lot of fog
I
effects,
remember
but
that, yeah.
not like in a cheesy way. Like they were
Yeah.
using a lot of fog effects, but it really added to the tone. Like it makes me think of like, the famous poster for The Exorcist. There's a lot of
Yeah.
fog, if I remember that correctly. Um, they were really going for like this 70s, late 70s, early 80s, like horror movie vibe. And I feel like they nailed it. I mean, like it's not like a modern version of that. It was just, this is the style and we committed to it and we executed it extremely well. Um,
Yeah. I mean, I
the
again,
lighting,
yeah,
um,
I was
just real
just
quick, the
bored,
lighting
dude.
as well. I loved it.
Yeah.
There are certain settings in the movie where it's like this red, sort of natural red light that's coming in through the windows because they've got like stained glass windows.
Yeah. It looked good. I'll give you
Really
that.
liked a lot about this movie.
I would be willing to give it another chance. Because I do remember it from a stylistic standpoint being very strong. I remember it being too reliant on, and even if the acting was good, I don't think the writing was very good, and I think that it was just too reliant on the characters acting to make it memorable. Because to be completely honest with you, I really only remember like one sequence and a couple pieces of imagery from this movie. Like I couldn't tell you what the plot was. I remember the scene in the graveyard just because it's memorable. And other than that, like I really couldn't tell you much about this movie, and I saw it like less than a year ago. Um, and I just remember being bored by the end of it. I didn't feel very engaged, but maybe it's just one of those things where if you really buy into the style of it, you probably
Mm.
would enjoy it more.
It creates a vibe, and I feel like if you watch this like on Halloween, you got your AC in your apartment to a cool 65 degrees. I think you'll enjoy this one more.
That's fair.
Got, nice and chilly. Um,
That's fair. I will say too, like I do agree with you that in terms of like this was one of the most anticipated films because The Conjuring 2 came out. The Conjuring 2 is when they introduced the nun character, um,
yeah,
and everyone knew that a nun movie was coming. So The Conjuring 2 was 2016, and then people were like really excited for the nun, and it came out 2 years later in 2018. But I remember everyone was kind of hyped for this movie, and I will agree with you. The lighting, the colors, the shots, some of the imagery were all strong, and I could see a version of this where it wasn't like that. So I do respect all of those aspects, and the director of the film is a nobody. Corin Hardy,
yeah.
he's done literally nothing else that's memorable. So it looks like he made one other movie that has like the same like color palette and like tone, um, like setting. So I don't know. It was fine. I would probably put it a little bit lower than number three, but I don't know. 5 out of 10 is what I gave it. I thought it was very average. Maybe if I rewatched, I'd bump it up to a six.
I gotta agree with a certain point you made about the plot, right? You can't remember the plot. Um, Plot is pretty thin. I'd have to admit that 100%. Uh,
And they devote a lot of time to it.
there's a My counter argument to that would be they're devoting the time to the characters. And I feel like if you're developing characters, that's arguably just as important as developing plot. There's a lot of
Yeah,
exposition between the characters. We learn a lot about them.
I'll agree
And
with that.
the plot is very it's kind of one dimensional. I'm already kind of forgetting all the aspects to it,
Yep.
but it's they're exploring the nun's suicide, and then weird stuff's happening, and there might be
There's a twist at
like a
the
cover up,
end.
or yeah, and there's like a twist at the end. But we're gonna touch upon this exact same idea couple more down my
Yeah, here's
list,
the thing,
the
dude.
idea
Is
of,
for
of
me,
plot versus character
yeah, dude.
development.
That's the thing. Is for me, as I've grown older, I have come to love for these movies. I love when they just pick like a schlocky story, like nothing groundbreaking, but they give every character like a stereotypical role and they act it well enough and they don't spend too much time on it because there's a very fine line here where you have to give these characters enough of a shitty backstory for you to care about them at all. But
Right.
then if you spend too much time on that shitty backstory, because it's going to be shitty, it's a horror movie. The writing isn't going to be good. If you spend too much time on it, it just gets boring and you're just waiting for the next scary thing to happen. And so it's such a fine line. And I feel like this movie just it leaned too hard into the shitty writing. And to me, that was enough to just kind of make it forgettable. I don't
I
know.
understand. I
That's like the
understand where you're
worst
coming
offense
from.
for me. For these movies, honestly, is for it to be forgettable is a pretty harsh offense.
I understand where you're coming from. But I think if you gave it a rewatch, you might appreciate it a little bit more for the performances, the effort they
That's
they
fair.
put into creating these characters. I thought was actually a pretty notable.
Okay.
So do we want to move to the next one?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, this one was actually for me kind of a toss up, and I kept flipping back number 4 and 5, but
I'm sure the
I
middle's
ended up
muddy.
yeah I ended up putting Annabelle Creation, so that's Annabelle 2, in fourth place. I really
Okay.
liked this one. Again, I really appreciated the development of the characters. There's the nun character, there's the little girls. You really sympathize for them. You sympathize for the father, the owner of the orphanage dude as well. Um, his wife also has kind of a developed character to her as well. So again, for the same reason as the Nun, they really develop these characters pretty well. Even the ones that don't get a lot of screen time, like with the few lines they have, they establish a character. They establish themselves as
Yeah.
at least being like this certain archetype,
Yeah.
right? There's
Yeah.
the one girl who's like, um,
Archetype.
kind of mean to the other girls, and she's
Yeah.
older, and you get what I'm saying, right?
Dude, yeah, I will agree with you. I like this movie. I've seen it
Yeah.
at least twice. I want to say I've seen it 3 times. I saw it the first time in theaters. I'd give this movie a 6 out of 10. Um, I last saw it uh in February, so pretty recently. And yeah, I like this movie a lot. I think that it has a lot of really creative sequences that work. There's the scarecrow stuff. There's
Yeah.
the shooting the ball. There's when the girl turns into the big scary monster with the her bones are all
Mm.
cracking around.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of memorable stuff in this movie, and most of it is well executed. There's the stuff when she's in the bunk bed, and like there's the weird stuff like she's looking in the crack of the bunk bed and stuff. And
Mhm.
this is a good movie. I um the last time I watched it, I said it's about 30 minutes too long, and the monster design is ass when they show it fully. Same problem as Insidious and Conjuring 2. Keep it subtle throughout. Glowing eyes and some horns is all we need. And I'll agree. This movie, like for most of it, is really good because when they show the monster, it's really subtle. And then
Mhm.
about the last 30 minutes, there's some really cheesy stuff with the demon where he's like hunched in like a corner,
Got like the horns
or
and stuff.
yeah, it's just whenever they show him like fully, it completely rips me out of the experience. It's a problem I have with a lot of these movies. Same with Insidious. Is as soon as you like lose the mystique, um, it really takes me out of it. And then I will also say that the main actress is pretty hit or miss. Like in some sequences she's good, but then like
Little girl, you mean?
yeah, she's really hit or miss in this movie, especially later on when she turns into like the evil possessed version.
Yeah.
It's really cheesy. It doesn't work at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. Here, let me see what you think about this. And this is off the top of the dome right now. I think this film would actually be a little stronger if they just scrap the doll. The doll doesn't need to be a part of it. The demon, like the parts where you see the demon subtly, it's really scary. Like you almost question whether you even saw it in the first place.
Yeah, just some
Like
eyes or
there's
some
also
horns.
this oh, it's a creepy doll, right in front of it. I feel like that, to me at least, takes away from it just a little bit.
I'll agree that like in general the like sometimes when Annabelle's trying to be creepy, like the doll itself,
Right.
it is kind of funny because it's just a fucking doll.
Right.
Um,
But it's a doll that they also designed to be extraordinarily creepy.
so scary,
No
dude.
doll,
It's so scary.
like no doll would ever look like that in the first place.
Yeah, no,
Like,
like the doll it's based on in real life is a Raggedy Ann doll, which
right,
looks way
right,
less menacing.
right.
Yeah, I mean,
If I feel like it would actually be better if they made the doll more like a real doll looking, instead of like, oh, it's a demon doll. Like if you saw
yeah,
that in a store, you'd go, oh, that's a demon doll.
yeah,
I'm not gonna buy that.
yeah. Well, here's the problem. The
Oh,
problem is that in The Conjuring, we're introduced to Annabelle in the first
right.
scene of Conjuring 1, and they designed her like that because it was a really creepy opener. Like it's a really strong opening to
Oh, I
Conjuring.
agree 100%.
And so they kind of like they shoehorned themselves into this doll design, and it's
Right.
memorable. At least it's iconic. Like you can recognize it
Oh, yeah, I
immediately.
can
Like
imagine it in my
you know,
head right
so
now.
so yeah, but I hear what you're saying. I don't think the idea of it is terrible though. Like the idea of a demon attaching
Yeah.
itself to this doll, and it opens them up to do whatever they want for like sequels and stuff, which we'll talk about. But um, I don't know. I don't necessarily think the movie would have been any different at all if they scrapped the doll. I think it would have been the exact same movie. Um,
Oh yeah. I mean the movie would have been the same. I feel like some scenes would have been a little more effective if
yeah,
it wasn't the doll or if it had a doll like when you see the Annabelle doll, you go, "Oh, that was designed to be a demon doll." If they made it more like, "Oh, it's a doll designed to be a doll," and maybe there's like something like subtly creepy about it.
yeah.
Something that you can't even really
Instead of it just
describe
being
in
the
words.
scariest
Like
doll you've
there's
ever
just
seen,
something a little
it's just,
that
I said instead of it just being the scariest doll you've ever seen.
right. Right, exactly.
Yeah, but I agree with you overall. Like this movie's probably in my top like 3 or 4 for the series.
Mm,
It's and that again, it's not like a great movie. Like there's some bad parts of this movie where like the sequences are. Oh, another part I hate about this movie is characters do some really stupid stuff in this movie. Like at certain points, especially later on, the characters' IQs collectively drop like 20 points and like everyone just is really really stupid, and I remember that took me out of it as well. But like
can you think
overall,
of an
like
example of what happened? Or
honestly off the top of my head I can't, but it's just a
yeah,
lot of like,
that's fair.
don't go in that room obviously, or like
Yeah.
don't, or like leave the house obviously, or like don't try to help this possessed person obviously. Just like I couldn't think of anything specifically, but I do remember that being like a lingering thought of like,
There is the you know
okay, we're
what? There is
just
the scene where she rolls down the hill into the barn, she's screaming, she crashes in there, and then everyone goes in. They're like, "Oh my god, are you okay?" She's like, "Yeah, I'm fine. Fucking demon now." Like, and it's like, "Oh, I guess she's fine." Like everyone's just like, "Oh, I guess she's fine now." All this demonic shit that everyone saw with their own eyes probably doesn't have anything to do with it.
yeah,
Like
it's just, and
a little silly.
all of these movies do it, but you reach a point where characters just need to do certain things to get to the next scary part.
Right.
And like every horror movie, the last like 30 minutes of this movie are the weakest part.
Yeah.
But other than that, I really enjoy it. I'd agree it's pretty high up there.
All right. Do you want to move on to the next one? All right. Next one, Annabelle Comes Home.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed this one, and I almost put it above Creation.
All right.
This is another one where we were talking about with I think we were talking about with the Nun, how like it doesn't really have a memorable plot, um, or maybe the plot is very thin. This is the thinnest plot of all of them. They're in a scary house and scary things happen, and that's the whole plot.
Yeah.
That's the whole
Dude,
plot.
okay, can I be real with
But
you?
I think but here's okay, yeah, go ahead.
I saw this for the first time last night and it's top 3 for me.
Really?
Yeah, dude, this movie, I loved this movie. I only gave it a 6 out of 10, or maybe, yeah, I think I gave it like a 6 out of 10. Um, I love this movie, dude. Like I was talking about earlier, when you have to ride that line between cliche story and cliche characters,
Oh, dude, this is the movie you were
dude,
describing.
this is the movie because it has a style which is just like 70s nostalgia, and then
Yep,
crank the fog machine up to 12 out of 10, right? This whole movie's filled with fog. I don't know if you realize
yep.
that. There's so much
Oh, I
fog.
realized it.
Dude,
Oh, I
they'll
realized it.
dude, they'll open a patio and the whole fucking set is filled
Yep,
with fog, bro. But like the characters are just enough to be like it's just something for you to care about.
yep,
And then there's like the cheesy boyfriend story, and it's
yep,
like it's just schlocky enough for me to actually like it, but they don't
yeah,
spend too much time on it. And then I also love that it's just like we're just, this movie's just an excuse to have like all of the scary things in the room are just gonna like, I don't know.
they're all gonna do something,
They're
and you're
all
just
gonna do
waiting for the
it,
next thing to do
right?
something.
And like honestly, dude, I'm here for it. Like I really, really enjoyed this movie. Again, the ending is whatever, but I thought the acting was fine throughout. Like I can't think
Yeah,
of a performance that I disliked. Um, this is a contender for me, dude. This one I really enjoyed it because it all takes place in just one night. You know what I mean? It's
yeah,
there's, I don't know. I for whatever you know what I would say? I think this movie, the best way I can put it, this movie has a pulse. is
Mm.
how I said it. Like this movie has a momentum and a vibe, and it doesn't. It's not like a lot of it's pretty good. Like I will say, I think a lot of the stuff with the ferryman was kind of weak. Like visually, I didn't think that it was super scary looking. I liked the idea of it with the coins on the eyes and stuff. And there's one sequence where
Oh,
she's
yeah.
like looking for him in the dark that is pretty good. But other than that,
Yeah.
I thought he
He's,
was
like,
just,
up here. Yeah.
yeah. And you see the eyes glowing. Like
And
there's
they
some,
fall.
right. There's some good stuff there. Um, Other than that though, like there's some really good stuff in this. Dude, there's the one sequence where the girl is trapped in the room and she looks at the TV turns on, and
Mhm.
um they play this like sci-fi suspense song. I don't know if you were really like into it, but
Oh,
like
yeah. Oh, yeah.
they
The
play this
music in this
super
one is
like
great.
trancy sci-fi song
Yeah.
during that sequence that
It feels like an acid trip.
dude, yeah, like it
Absolutely
does.
does.
And like after we watched that sequence, Natalie turned to me and she was like, "That was different than like that one sequence was different than like anything I've seen in this franchise." Like there's a lot of momentum and style in this movie, and it doesn't overstay its welcome with the plot. Um, I loved this movie. I'm gonna be real with you.
That's totally valid, and I agree with everything you just said, and I might even reevaluate where I put it on my list as well because of what you just said. It goes back to what we were talking about with the idea of relatable characters. Characters you understand their motivations, you understand their background, and then you can put yourself in their shoes. And um that's they're incredibly realistic teenagers is
Yeah,
what I felt. Is
yeah.
like, yeah, they're awkward. Yeah, there's the guy who's just trying to get with the girl. He has no idea what he's doing or how to do it, but maybe I'll show up to her house with a guitar or something. Um
And you
and
need
she
those
kind of likes him
moments.
too. She's awkward about it. It's so realistic. It's so realistic. I feel like most people can actually think of times in their life when they felt like these characters.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a
and I think
strong.
that's probably the biggest strength of this movie.
I agree. It's this movie has a really strong setup.
Mm,
And it's funny because for those first like 30 minutes or so, or like for all of the aspects that we're talking about, I remember like Natalie had turned to me and she was like, "I don't care about like any of this cheesy stuff. Like this stuff is really lame." And I had to be like no, listen, like this stuff is cheesy and stupid, but sometimes you don't realize how much of an impact it has on like the contrast of the film, because you kind of need sometimes to have like a soft reset of like, okay, like here's a little bit of humor, here's a little bit of like relatability, and then we can go back to like the random haunted house sequences that are hit or miss, but for the most part, I think this movie nailed it. And I think if you added like 15% more of Lorraine and Ed, this could have been Conjuring 2,
yeah,
because it's like this could have been the movie, and it almost is, of like we're going to put like a bunch of characters from the universe into one movie. And they kind of did
yeah,
that, but it was just new characters. And
yeah.
the only way you can do that is if you stick some teenagers in the house and it's one night, and some
Right.
scary stuff happens, and like yeah, like I really enjoyed the idea, just the concept of it. Like yeah,
Hmm.
it's easy to make a movie where you just have a bunch of random characters, but I like the concept of Annabelle just allows all of these spirits to come back for one night. And
Right.
yeah, I'm not saying it's like again, like I don't think any of these movies are like fantastic, but this one surprised me a lot. And yeah, I don't know.
So one thing I want to address. So you brought up the TV scene, and I loved that, and that is a contender for my favorite scene. But I think my favorite sequence in the movie was when the one character, the girl, is walking past the samurai suit, and all that happens is you just hear like Japanese voices screaming, slashing, and that tells a whole story just through the audio, and it's creepy. And you just use your own imagination as to what the whole story is behind that haunted samurai suit. And I think there's not enough of that in horror movies. Like, uh, it's an example of, so we go by the rule of like show don't say in movies in general. Like,
Yeah.
it's generally stronger if you show don't say. I think it's even stronger if you, and I'm trying to think of a verb for this, but instead of show, get the audience to imagine what happened. And that, I think, is just there's something special to that. And I think if they took that to another level, I think that could be a something that could be used in future movies.
Yeah, I agree. It was a good sequence. And yeah, show don't tell is like screenwriting 101, right? Like I
Right.
remember I took a creative writing class in college, or sorry, in high school, and that was like one of the very first things we learned. And it's like the antithesis of a horror of every horror movie is, or any movie in general, is when two characters sit down and they just talk the plot, and
Right.
then stuff,
And
and then
I
and
think
then
we'll get to that as we get lower down this list.
yeah, and then some unrelated scary stuff happens, and you're like, oh, you just got some terrible screenwriter to write a script, and then a different production guy just made some unrelated scary stuff, and you shoved them
Yep.
together. So yeah, I'm glad to see that you enjoyed this movie as much. I was scared that you were gonna think it was really bad because the characters are so like cheesy and stereotypical, but I think this is like a great. I mean, like, listen, if I'm gonna watch one of these movies, I'm not gonna take it that seriously, and this is a good movie to put on with some friends and have a couple drinks and like half make fun of, half enjoy. Um,
Yeah.
and honestly, I'm probably also just a sucker for like the time frame of like the 70s,
Yeah.
nostalgic vibe. Yeah, it,
You
it,
know,
it
I think I would have to make some kind of comparison to um Cabin in the Woods. I feel like there's something to it that compares these two movies. Like, it's teenagers in a spooky situation, and a variety show kind of happens of horror, right? So I think we can move on to number 6. Yeah, that's 6. Um Annabelle, the first Annabelle.
dude, I hate this movie.
Yeah, I thought it was at best excruciatingly mediocre.
I,
And
I
at worst, just not a very good movie. It's just incredibly forgettable. The scares that are in it are just kind of dumb looking. They're just dumb. Um, I'm not even sure if I remember everything that happened.
didn't you
They
just watch
have
it?
the Oh, no, not this one. I watched 2 and 3 recently.
Oh,
I didn't watch
okay,
the
okay. I
first
was
one.
gonna say if you
This one
watched
I watched.
I was gonna say if you watched
This
this
one I
last night and
watched
you
like
still
when it
can't
first came
remember
out.
it, like that would be
Oh no.
incredible.
This one I watched when it first came out, whenever that was,
Me too.
2016.
Yeah,
Um,
2014.
I only remember basically one. So I remember that there's a there's literally the magical black woman trope where she comes in and saves them all. She saves the white people.
Yeah,
Like that's like literally what happened.
yeah,
Uh, to the letter, that is the trope of
yeah.
like the magical black woman. Um, and there's I remember there's like a demon dog. Am I crazy? Is there a demon dog?
Dude, I'll be honest with
It's
you.
upside down.
I should have read a synopsis for this because I saw this movie one time in theaters and I hated it. And I and it has been on my letterbox as one of the lowest rated movies I've ever had for so long. And for the longest time, I've been thinking to myself, like, Tyler, you need to rewatch this movie to make sure that that you have it in the right place, because I've been like almost, some you relate your ratings to things that you already have established, and so sometimes I'll be like, well, was it as bad as Annabelle? Um, I, what I do remember is I remember the scares were really uneventful and boring, and I
Yep.
remember that like 90% of the movie was devoted to like some like dramatic B plot between the characters that owned the doll, and it was like
Yeah.
really like poorly written, poorly acted, and like I remember the movie barely had anything to do with Annabelle.
Right. She was just also there, you know?
Like she was barely in the movie.
It was not a good movie. Um, I don't know what else to say about it.
It's
I
hard.
just remember that there was a scene where there was like a demon dog like on the ceiling like upside down, and that the image of it was kind of scary. The way they pulled it off was not scary. Nothing they did was scary. Um, I remember that Annabelle like was like covered in a sheet and like stood up
Of
out
course
of a
she oh
chair
dude,
maybe.
of course she was.
Right, exactly. They put her in a chair, sitting up like a person, because they're like, remember, this is the haunted doll, and we gotta fucking be scared by it later, so we gotta
Right.
sit it up on this fucking rocking chair. Maybe
Yeah.
the rocking chair rocked back and forth
Yeah,
a
yeah,
few
yeah. I'm sure.
times.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah, it definitely
and they're
did. It
like,
definitely did.
whoa, why? And then they look at it and it stops, and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
they
yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah,
they
yeah.
look away and it rocks some more. They look back, and then the fucking sheet stands up like there's a person in it, and then
Yeah,
it collapses because there was actually nothing in it, and they're like,
yeah.
oh, that was a little weird. Probably the wind,
Yeah, no, definitely. And there's definitely a sheet on top of the doll at some point, and then the
Yeah.
doll was sitting there, and then while the sheet was
Yep.
on, it got higher up than it was supposed to be because
Yep.
the doll is, and then
Yep.
some, and then maybe someone pulled the sheet off, and then nothing was there.
Yeah, and there's nothing there.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That
Yeah.
probably definitely
I
happened,
feel
right?
like that's happened in every single one of these movies, actually. They need to consider stop doing that,
Dude,
maybe.
all right. This is a little bit unrelated, but I was just reminded of a trope that they have in this series that I don't mind, but I noticed it last night. They do this thing in this series where in a lot of other horror movies, there's this shitty part of the film where the kids see scary stuff is happening and they run and they tell their parents and their parents don't believe them.
Yeah.
You're a stupid dumb idiot, and they don't.
Right.
Right. And then there's like 15 minutes of the movie where they're like trying to convince them, right?
Right.
In this series, every single time, dude, I'm telling you, every time except for maybe Annabelle Creation, every single
Yeah.
time the kids will run up to the parents and say, Mom, the house is haunted. And the mom will say, No, it's not. You're a stupid idiot. And then right after they say that, something scary happens in front of the parents' eyes and they immediately
And
get
then the
on
parents
board.
just yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't mind it, but they do it in
It's not even
Conjuring.
just kids and parents, it's like the unbeliever. There's an
Yes.
unbeliever, like the cop in the first Conjuring. He's like,
Yes.
"Oh, I don't believe in no fucking ghosts." And yeah, you ever see that on patrol? The one guy,
Yeah, dude, and like it
yeah,
happens with the mom. It
yeah.
happens with the mom too in the
That's what you
Conjuring
get for
2.
not believing in supernatural
Dude,
ghosts.
that's what you get for not being a Christian.
Right,
Um,
right.
no,
You
but
gonna
that,
start going to church now, sheriff? Like,
yeah,
you know?
dude, they do that, man. Like they do it in the Conjuring 2 with the mom as well. Like the kids say, like, "Oh, like stuff's happening." She's like, "You're an idiot," and then like the dresser moves. They do it in the
Right.
Conjuring 1. They do it a lot in this series. And I don't mind it. It's just it stuck out to me a lot that like that is definitely I predicted it before it happened in the Conjuring 2 because I'm
Mhm.
like they do that a lot. Um,
Yeah.
but whatever. I mean, I think I would probably rather that than have the typical like I don't believe you for 15 minutes or
Yeah.
whatever.
Right. You know what? I feel like in a way it might be a wink to that trope of
Maybe.
like, oh, the I don't believe you, but like they resolve it instantly. Whereas in most movies, it's like that's the whole plot is them trying to resolve that and trying to get them to believe them.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the worst thing in the world.
No, I
I
don't
think it's all
either.
right.
I think it's fine. It's better than the alternative. It's just really funny once you notice it. That's all.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, Annabelle is dog shit. And it's funny because the
Yeah.
other two movies in the Annabelle series are like some of the
Yeah.
strongest of
I
the
agree.
series.
They're
So
very strong.
and conversely to contrast the hype that was built up for the nun, the hype built up for Annabelle was huge because everyone loved that intro scene from The Conjuring, and
Yeah.
and this was the first time that they had decided they were going to take a side character from one horror movie and make another horror movie about that character. This was the first time that they did that. No other franchise is doing it, and this was the first time that this franchise did it. And there was a lot of hype for Annabelle because everyone loves creepy like it's perfect. It's a perfect stupid horror movie premise, and it was dog shit. It was so bad.
Yeah.
Even I saw this movie like when it came. I was probably in high school. Whenever this movie came
Whatever
out,
age we were. I think we were probably
2014. This movie's 7 years old,
oh my god.
and I was probably the perfect age to see this movie in a theater and get scared. And I remember
Yeah, and you still
snoozing.
thought it was shit.
I still thought it was
I
shit.
did too.
Every horror
I
movie's
was
better
a
in
year
theaters.
younger than you, and I thought it was shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we both agree
bad
on
movie.
the bottom of the list.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
if you want to do the
where
honors,
do we begin with this one? Where do we begin?
if you could pronounce it.
Well, I can pronounce it because the
Okay.
proper way to say it is La Llorona.
Wow.
Yeah. So, La Llorona. I hope that wasn't disrespectful to like Mexican culture
It
or
was.
anything, because I think this is supposed to be based on like a real Mexican like scary folk tale.
No, it is, and I'm definitely canceling you on Twitter right now.
Okay, thanks for that. I actually took notes on this one while watching it. I have like a full page of notes.
Good. Don't want to miss anything.
Well, yeah. If I didn't take these notes, I would have nothing to say because I watched it 2 nights ago.
You forgot it?
I barely remember anything that happened.
Dude, it's funny. This movie is attached to the franchise, but it's almost like they didn't want it to be.
It's not. It's not. It is, but like.
I mean,
but like by what metric? By what metric even is it attached to the franchise?
The main guy in it, the priest, like makes some reference to the nun, doesn't he? Is that the only connection?
Yeah, that's the only connection. Yeah, yep.
Yeah,
that's the only connection.
Because I remember when I put it on, Natalie and I watch it, and I'm like, "Oh, this is the new Conjuring movie," and she's like, "This isn't a Conjuring movie," and I'm like, "I'm pretty sure it is." And then like 10 minutes later, like the priest guy like made some comment to like some other
like, oh,
property.
you guys seen that movie fucking Annabelle?
Yeah, dude, pretty much. Dude, okay, so yeah, La Llorona is a classic folklore, and it's basically just like the boogeyman, but like it has more of a story. And all the stuff they explain in this movie is like true to that folklore, but holy shit, this movie is so boring.
Dude, and I'm gonna be honest. If people listen to this, someone's gonna get mad at me for this. The folklore itself doesn't make much sense.
No.
If I'm being honest, right?
Yeah.
Because the story is, there's the woman and like her husband cheats on her or something like that, right? And she's jealous, so logically she drowns her children. Right. And then she goes, "Oh no, I shouldn't have drowned my children. Now I need to go kill other children to make up for it." Like, like what? Like, is that really what the original story is?
I think I think it's just vengeful killing. Maybe there's like a trying to get a new kid thing going on, like just to kill a kid to get the new one, but yeah, dude, this
here's one thing I want to address. Like, the rules of the ghost don't make sense. And I feel like for a good ghost movie, the rules of the ghost almost definitely have to make sense.
Yeah, that's true.
Here's what the ghost can do to you if it gets you. Here's how the ghost can get to you. Here are its powers, right? And we can establish this by sort of showing it to you.
Yeah.
What are the ghost's powers? What does it do when it gets you? Does it just grab you and go, ugh? Oh, because that's actually something that happens multiple times in the movie. Here's a note I wrote.
Okay.
All it does is it screams at people, grabs their arm, and burns them on the arm.
Yeah.
Remember that? It grabs them on the arm, it goes, ah! It burns them, and then it disappears.
Dude, it's so cheesy too. Like
it's like
every time
what the ghost does?
Like, dude, every time the ghost is on screen in this, it's so cheesy. It's so poorly executed. It looks terrible, and it's none of this movie is scary. Every time it tries to be scary, it's just bad. And then everything in between that is really shitty acting.
So, I will say, I think closest thing to a strong thing in this movie. I don't want to say the strongest thing. I want to say the closest thing to a strong thing in this movie is Tuco, because you've seen Breaking Bad, right?
Yes,
Yeah, so Tuco's character is almost pretty good.
almost.
Like, okay, he's kind of an unorthodox exorcist, kind of weird, kind of like on edge, kind of like not on edge, like kind of on edge, kind of little bit of a weirdo, a little psychotic.
Yeah.
Um, I think there's something there that could have been good and actually almost is good at certain parts, but like still isn't. Um,
It's yeah. This movie is like a soft dude, and it's Velma, bro. I forgot it's
yeah,
fucking
it's Velma,
Velma.
dude.
Oh
It's
my god, bro.
Velma.
I give this movie a 3 out of 10. And literally the only thing, the only part, the only my whole review for this movie on Letterboxd is just the like the when you're doing a mock meme and it's like the uppercase lowercase lettering. It's just
Yeah.
that and it just says keep your kids close. That's my whole review for the movie because it sums that's it, dude. It's like they had a folklore and they're like, "Okay, I guess we'll just build a shitty plot around this."
Okay, for Velma, like I don't think that she's a bad actress,
Yeah,
but she was given
dog shit.
zero to work with. Zero.
Shit.
And let's go back to Show Don't Say. One of her first lines in the movie is "My husband is dead." Like, okay, like okay, wow, that's gonna make me feel bad for her. Like, instead of like maybe showing her looking at an old picture of her husband,
Right, it's so
anything, she
easy.
just says, "Hey, my husband is dead." Oh, you mean like my dead husband,
Yeah.
right? Like, what's that gonna do for us? You
Wow,
know,
that's really sad. You know what else is sad? I have a dead
my dead
husband.
husband.
My dead husband's really. You know what else is really sad? I have a dead husband and children.
Yep.
I have to watch my
Um,
children.
I mean, do they give us a reason to care for these characters?
No.
Well, she says she has a dead husband. That doesn't really play into anything whatsoever. Mention it like a couple times, and that's all that happens. They mention it. It's like, oh, I have a
Yeah.
dead husband. Oh, okay. Um, and where was I going with that?
There's nothing. For this character, there's no reason to
Yeah,
like
there's
these
really nothing.
characters.
There's really
That's
nothing.
what you
Yeah,
were going with. They don't give us a
that is what I
reason
was
to
going
care
for.
about these characters. And because of that, when you have a movie that's like 70% just these characters acting, it's I don't know, man. This movie could have been passable if the scary parts were better. Because let's
Yeah,
be real, most of these movies don't have great acting. They don't have great writing. They don't have great endings. You have to make a good movie in this franchise. All you have to do is make like 3/4 of a decent movie with creative horror sequences.
yeah,
And this movie just doesn't hit the bar on any of the metrics. It even with the same story, the same writing, the same acting, if La Llorona was at least like a scary ghost, and if her time on screen was moderately frightening, this movie would be passable. But those parts are some of the worst parts of the movie. Anytime La Llorona's on screen, you think to yourself, oh, finally we get to get away from this shitty plot. And then as soon as she's on screen, you're like, man, I can't wait for this to be over so that we can get to something else. You're just ping-ponging between two terrible
right,
aspects. You know what I mean?
right.
You never get comfort in this movie.
And, I think this may have the dumbest character decisions of the whole movie. Every
Yeah.
decision they make is dumb. I mean, the number one obviously is when the little girl has her doll, and it's on the wrong side of the anti-ghost salt. And
Yes,
she's like,
dude.
"Oh, I gotta get it. I gotta
Dude.
get my doll. I love my doll." Bro, for anyone listening who hasn't seen the movie, she's like 12 years old. She's like 12 years old. She's seen the ghost.
Yeah.
She knows like if this was like a 4-year-old girl, okay, fine, that makes sense.
She's a
She
dumb
has
idiot.
higher she's supposed to have higher cognitive abilities than that at this point
Yeah.
in this stage
I
of
remember that now.
development,
Yeah,
you
I remember that
know?
now. Dude, and
Then
again,
there's
it's
the Mexican woman, she what like she's mad that her kids died and then she just does some crazy shit like
yeah.
and then she does crazy shit and then 2 seconds later she's like, "Oh, I shouldn't have done that
I sh-
crazy shit." It's like, "Oh, like, you know?"
Yeah, yeah. No, all the motivations are garbage. And yeah, like we talked about earlier, like as soon as characters start making decisions that are just to service the plot and go against general intelligence, it takes you out of the movie. You know what I mean? Like there's all of these easy metrics of like, okay, like does the character do something that you would not do if you were in their shoes? There's a mark against it. Is the monster scary to look at or is it cheesy? There's a mark against it. Is the story memorable or passable? There's a mark against it. Are the characters acted well? Are they written well? Like there's all of these points that they somehow just missed them all, and then I
Yeah.
don't, I'm willing to bet that I almost wonder if they cut out other part. Like I wonder if Ed and Lorraine had a cameo or something that they cut out. Like I wouldn't be surprised if
Because they couldn't get him for the movie.
I just wonder if they tried to disassociate this film from the franchise purposely after once they got into the editing room and they were like, "Oh wait, there's nothing here for us to work with." You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I don't know how you mess up a monster design. I don't know how you mess up jump scares so badly. Like you said, like it's like the Pennywise model of let's just make the monster scream for a second in your face
Yeah.
and then it goes away and until the next time it screams in your face.
Right.
At least Pennywise looks cool. You know what I mean?
Well, in the It movies, at least it establishes what the monster can do to you right away. The
Yeah,
monster can
and
fucking kill you.
yeah.
What can La Llorona do? I don't even know. I still don't know. I still don't know what
Yeah.
La Llorona can do to you.
Okay, so you bring up a great point, which is that yes, for a horror movie to work, the audience has to be aware of the rules in order for certain situations to be scary. Because if there are no rules, then every situation is the same amount of scary and you become desensitized
It's
to it.
zero.
And
Yeah.
so you have to have peaks and valleys of the characters are safe right now so that when they enter a situation that you know is unsafe, that's where the horror comes from,
Right.
opposed to just anything could happen at any time. That's not scary. Um, but then to contrast that, I think the reason that they're able to shit out a million of these movies is because demons have the loosest rules available. A demon
Mhm.
just does whatever you think is scary and can kind of just do whatever it wants, depending on how scared you are or how vulnerable you are. Like if you're gonna if you're gonna criticize like La Llorona's rules, you're kind of just criticizing like all of these movies because the rules are never super set in these films, and that's why it's not an elevated horror movie in my opinion. It's closer to a slasher because it really is just kind of like scary stuff happens sometimes and then at the end there's a big battle.
Yep. Let's see if I had some.
Any final thoughts?
One of my notes was ooga booga booga, which is
Hmm.
what the ghost does if it gets you.
Yeah, that's
It
pretty
just goes
good.
ooga booga booga.
Yeah,
Um.
that's pretty insightful.
Uh. Oh, you know what I wanted to say? The Conjuring series as a whole, great soundtracks.
Oh
Great
yeah,
soundtracks.
I'm surprised we didn't bring that up already. The
Conjuring 1,
yeah.
great soundtracks. Conjuring 2 has London Calling in it.
Yeah,
Um,
so that's all it needs.
yeah, La Llorona had Superfly. That was pretty cool. I had high hopes after I heard Superfly in that opening scene. I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, that's, I love that song.
Yeah.
It's great. Let's hear."
I will agree that one thing that I will say generally people that aren't cinema enthusiasts, they typically overlook sound design. I think it's the hardest part of a film, besides maybe like acting, to actually like discern what is good and bad. What I'm trying to say is the sound design in this series is very, very, very good. And sound design carries a horror movie. Like, it makes or breaks a horror movie, in my opinion. The more I watch dramatic things, the more I realize that like you can put a sad soundtrack to like bullshit footage and make it sadder, and that applies to horror as well. And um, they use a lot of strings, like violins and strings, and this series does something very specific that Insidious also kind of does, where something scary will happen and they'll turn the volume to 15 and blast like a string stinger, just
Mm.
like randomly. It'll either be strings or it'll be like a chorus of human voices.
Yeah.
But it sounds great. I mean, I agree with you. The soundtrack is like awesome throughout. um, so yeah, I'll give you that.
All right. And then one last thing. If you want to end this soon, otherwise I'm down to keep going. But
I mean,
I
what do you
want to
got?
ask the question: which Conjuring ghost would you be most okay with being haunted by, and which one would you definitely not want to be haunted by?
I definitely wouldn't want to be haunted by. I definitely wouldn't want to be haunted by the Annabelle demon, just
Okay.
because it seems like the Annabelle demon can just be a catalyst for any other demons you come into contact with in life. And so it seems like if you're haunted by that demon, any other demon you come into contact with will immediately start fucking your shit up. So that seems like a pretty fat L. Um,
Yeah.
and then I don't know, like the one I would care about the least. Um, I mean, if I just keep a little sack of gold coins, can I pay the ferryman to leave me alone?
Ah.
Like, if it's, do I just have to pay him like a silver dollar every day? I mean, it's gonna add up. It's 52, it's 356 bucks a year, but if that's all it takes, not too bad, right? I don't know.
That's not too bad at all. Yeah. Um, actually, I came here prepared with an answer for which one I would not care about at all. But I think I actually need to change it because I said La Llorona at first.
Yeah.
It's like worst case scenario. Every once in a while, she screams at me and maybe burns my arm. Not fun, but like, eh,
You don't have
really not
kids,
that bad.
so
Yeah, I don't have kids, right? So what the fuck's La Llorona gonna do to me? But I'm changing that to the Crooked Man because
yeah.
the Crooked Man didn't even do that. The Crooked Man literally did not even do
He
that.
just
He
sang a nursery rhyme.
kind of sang a nursery rhyme, did some crooked shit.
Yeah, he might keep you up at night.
That was it. That was all he did.
Yeah,
Um,
he
he
might just
looks
sing a lot, but
he looks very CGI. I imagine he would look very CGI in person. The worst one. I don't know. You made a good point with the Annabelle,
yeah,
the
because
Annabelle
it's a
doll,
cop
because it's
out.
like a conduit for other demons.
Yeah,
Um,
like you step foot in a graveyard and it's like, okay, you're just fucked.
yeah, you're fucked. Um, you know what? The demon in the first Conjuring,
Yeah,
once it possesses you, you can't leave your house.
what was it, Zazu?
Yeah, like Zazu or something. Yeah, once it possesses you, like you physically cannot leave your house. Um, makes you like throw up blood and stuff. That I think that might have been the worst. That might be the worst one. Um,
Yeah.
okay, do you want to keep going for a few more minutes because I've got one more question I
Oh, let's do one
wanted to
more
ask.
question and then we'll wrap up.
All right. So the Conjuring 3 is coming out pretty soon. I think it's coming out this year.
Okay.
It's called the Conjuring. What's it called? The Conjuring. The Devil Made Me Do It.
Yes, it is coming out later this year.
Yeah. So what are your hopes for it? What do you hope doesn't happen? What are your fears for it?
Okay, so I hope that I kind of hope that they put a cap on it. I hope that they wrap up the series. I don't think they will because they could make spin-offs for eternity. And I think what they might do is they might wrap up like the main story with Ed and Lorraine and then just continue the spin-off stuff. I think that's a possibility. It will make it harder to introduce new characters for spin-offs, but Lorraine has that premonition of Ed dying, and I think he might maybe die in the next one. Maybe that would be like a cool story cap to put on it. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know.
No,
I,
in
I,
the Nun, they sort of imply that the vision she had that was so horrifying was actually of the nun.
yeah.
So I was like, oh, that's kind of anticlimactic.
Well, yeah. No, it's in The Conjuring 2. She had a vision of the nun like killing Ed, and then she prevents it at the end
Yeah,
of the movie. So that's
yeah, but
whatever.
it doesn't happen in The Conjuring 2. But
But
yeah,
I
they keep referencing that. I want there to be a satisfying conclusion to that.
yeah
Like
yeah me too.
her vision was something truly
I mean, it would be
fucked
cool if
up.
they just like if they had if they that's the only like running thread they have that they could
Right.
possibly do a cap on. But I don't know. I mean, if they want to stay like true to like the real life people, Ed's still alive, so I don't know if they'll go that route with it. Overall, for the film, I hope it's decent. I hope it's better than Conjuring 2, which I disliked. But if my hunch is correct, I think it's going to be really similar to the Conjuring 2. It's probably going to be a lot of screaming, a lot of battles, a lot of I don't know. I don't have high hopes for it. But I hope that it is better than the second film. That's really all I can say.
I think what people will expect is, more battles, more bigness, ghosts everywhere, things flying about. I would really love to see them do the exact opposite. It's
Yeah.
very subtle,
Yeah.
very small, little things, but there's the sense of dread, there's the sense of evil that's kind of overwhelming everything. Maybe Lorraine,
Yeah.
you know, thinks, there's something bad going on here. Even if it doesn't seem as bad as it is, it's worse than you think.
Yeah.
Um, it's maybe based on the title, it's going to be the devil himself.
That'd be
That
kind of
would be
cool.
that would be the logical, perfect cap on things,
It'd be
right?
kind of raw, yeah. Yeah, I agree with
Um,
you. I hope they return to the roots of Conjuring 1, small scale stuff. Honestly, even if they can make something similar to the third Annabelle film, I think it'll be
yeah,
fine. Because Ed and Lorraine are likable characters, they're good
yeah.
actors, and so I think if they focus the movie around them, it's not going to be terrible. But again, I really disliked The Conjuring 2, so it really depends on what story they inject those two people into. But I don't know. Hopefully it's good.
So let me bring up something that might worry you a little bit. From what I saw on Wikipedia, and actually, let me double check it. I have it right here. What I saw on Wikipedia, and I'm verifying it right now. The director of the third Conjuring, yep,
Is what?
not James Wan, not James Wan.
Whatever. I'm
It
sure
is
he's a producer or something.
Michael Chavez, who is the same director as La Llorona.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Oh no. All right. Well,
yeah,
it's been
that's
nice.
worrying.
It's been
That's
good.
worrying.
Holy shit.
It's been good, boys.
All right. Well,
It's been good, boys and girls.
on that positive note of optimism, I'm gonna wrap it up. Thank you for joining me. It was a longer episode. We'll see if it stays as a one-parter. It probably will. But yeah, thanks for joining me. It was awesome. You should definitely come back on
It's been
sometime.
fun. It's been fun, Giros.
Yeah, we should pick another topic soon and maybe do this again.
We really live in a movies with Giros.
We yeah, dude, we truly do live in a society. Yeah, thanks for joining me, man. I hope you have a good one.
See you, Giros.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Movies with Giros. If you are watching on YouTube, drop a like. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, click 5 stars. Stick around. I don't know what next episode is going to be, but I'm going to try to get it out consistently. If you want to be a guest or if you have any suggestions for the next episode, go ahead and leave a comment. And if you want to view my movie activity, I log everything on Letterboxd, so feel free to follow me there as well. Link in the description below. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye.